Welcome back to the Genealogy Gems YouTube channel. I'm Lisa Louise Cook from the Genealogy Gems podcast, and we are back at Roots Tech 2015, and I've got your DNA guide here at Genealogy Gems, Diane Southard. Hi.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you for sticking around for another session because we, in our last video, talked about kind of how do we get started with DNA, and DNA is such a hot topic at this year's Roots Tech because things have changed. Websites are changing, different companies are getting involved, and there are more tests. So be sure and check out our first interview. But in this session, I'd love to talk with you about some of the most common questions you're getting, because this is really a hotbed of your opportunity to hear back from people who are testing, who want to test, and so we can learn more about what they want to know throughout the year on Genealogy Gems. What's one of the most common questions you're getting?
I'll tell you one of the most surprising questions, and it's probably just surprising to me because I've been in the industry for 15 years and I've seen it evolve and I've watched it, so it's changed slowly. But for a lot of people, they heard about it maybe 10 years ago at a conference or something, and they're remembering bits and pieces of what they heard, and they're trying to fit it all back together and make sense of what's going on now. And a common question I've had is, oh, well, I can't do the DNA because I'm a female, right?
I had somebody say that at the booth, yeah, and I was like, no, you can.
You can. And it comes back to about 10 years ago when we only had the Y DNA and the mitochondrial DNA test. And really the mitochondria wasn't that useful. And so it was all about the Y. It was about the male line and your surname. And so it was really a lot then about educating women that they couldn't take the Y DNA test.
Exactly.
And they understood it, and they're taking it a little too far now. They feel like, oh, well, I can't do that because I'm a female, or my dad's not alive, I don't have any brothers. And so a lot of my time has been spent, no, you can do this.
Good.
And it's actually going to be valuable for you. So that's been a surprising question I've actually had a lot here at Roots Tech. So I'm really excited to be able to tell them that they can, and it will help them.
So we know that the Y DNA is the male.
Right.
And we've been starting to get trained that mitochondrial is something that a woman can take.
Mm-hmm.
And really briefly, you had explained to me about mitochondrial, about how the mother passes it down. And it's not that a man can't have results from that. He just can't pass it down. Is that right?
That's correct.
I learned something from our DNA guide.
Yes,
okay. So,
yes.
But explain that better than I did.
Okay, so how I see it and how I always explain it to people is that the woman is so much more generous than the man in passing on her DNA. See, we give our DNA to
it was
all
worth
of
waiting
our children.
for.
Exactly. To all of our children, our boys and our girls, because we love them all equally, right? Where the men just give it to the men and they keep it in the family that way, right? So, but then you're right, only then the females can pass it on to the next generation. So for you, with your 3 girls, they all have your mitochondrial DNA.
Right.
And your 2 little grandbabies, they have your mitochondrial
The
DNA.
boys.
The boys, but they're not going to pass it on. So you better hope for some granddaughters if you're going to pass on that mitochondrial DNA.
Exactly. And then there's autosomal.
Right.
And I confess, I'm still a little hazy on it, but this is one that both can do.
Exactly.
So tell us about the difference. How far back? Are we going to say, oh, you have 10,000 years back, you were Italian? Is that what that's about? It's not about.
Well, here's the confusing part about autosomal DNA testing. When I tell a genealogist that you can only use autosomal DNA testing about 6 generations back, it's because that's how much DNA I'm sharing with my ancestor and you're sharing with our common ancestor. So to connect us, we share so little, really, from our ancestors back that far, it genealogically isn't useful back about 5 or 6 generations.
Wow.
Sometimes you can push it back, but really for most people, we're going to stick with that 5-6 generation mark. Now the confusing part comes in is because that's only one part of the test results. The other part is this pretty map that tells you where your ancestors are from, right? And so you've just understood that it's only going 6 generations back. So you look at your map and you're expecting to see information about your recent ancestors. It doesn't work that way. The map information is actually about your distant ancestry. They're 2 different kinds of results, and you can't use them the same way. So it's confusing, and I think that's a big point that we need to educate better, that people can really use that list of matches for their genealogy and use that pretty map for history.
Okay. That's why we need our DNA guide. Finally, I wanted to talk about other types of questions and things that are misconceptions? Because I do hear from people, and I think that maybe they have some misconceptions about what DNA can do and what it can't do. Can you clarify that for us?
I agree. And a big thing is centered around these maps, these autosomal DNA maps. These testing companies are brand new at this. They've only been doing it for a few years. They're still working out all the bugs, and each testing company is doing things a little bit differently. The laboratory process is the same, but the math they're using, the statistics, the analysis, the databasing, that's all unique to each company. So you can be tested at one company and they'll tell you, Lisa, you are completely 100% European. And then you go to another company and they're like, oh, no, you definitely have some Western Mongolian or something, right? And you're
How
wondering,
does that happen that it's two different answers?
exactly, how does that happen? And it's because their pool of people that they're comparing you against is different.
Oh.
So if they have Western Mongolian in their DNA database, then maybe you're going to match that. But the next company, they might not have those same people, so they can't tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot about their database, the size of it, the kind of people that are in it, and that's all influencing the results they're giving you. So people see this and they're like, oh, it's no good. It doesn't mean anything. I can't use it. And that's not really the case. You just have to use it in the right way and take it with a grain of salt. And especially remember, this is about history, not about genealogy.
Perfect. And finally, there might be a hesitation on some people's part about privacy. And I know we were talking at dinner the other night, and Diane went out and met with some of the folks at Ancestry, and there are issues with how much is being shared, what pieces are being shared, and then just in general, what happens with the stuff I swab out of my mouth? I mean, talk about the privacy issue.
I think privacy is a big thing on people's mind, and I think you should think about it. You are giving away information about your own personal self, things that can
other people too,
and other
really.
people, right? Because your siblings, your parents, your children, certainly they're sharing DNA with you. So it is something that you need to think about. However, the risk for genealogists in this kind of testing is relatively small as far as what can happen to you, what bad things might be able to happen to you. In addition, several years ago, there was a law passed that has kind of said, look, if you're trying to bar someone from their insurance or to tell them they can't have a job or something like that based on genetics, we're not going to let you do that. In fact, you can't even hurt your posterity or your ancestors by yourself getting tested. That law covers everybody in your immediate family from any kind of harm that might come from any results you might get from your genetics.
Right. You know, there's so much to consider when it comes to DNA, and I hope that you will stay tuned here on the channel. Diane's going to be joining me more often, and she's going to be on the audio podcast and, of course, on the Genealogy Gems blog. I'm so glad that you joined us here. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.